Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Ryan Gagne, the owner and operator of Venture X Marlborough Apex Center, a 16,600 square foot flexible workspace community offering 55 private office suites, meeting rooms, a phone room, and a lounge. Located in MetroWest Massachusetts, this space serves as a vibrant hub for local professionals and businesses. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ashley. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to having you on and talking about everything that you're doing here with Venture X. And so that's where I'd love to get started, is have you share with the listeners more about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm the owner and operator of Venture X here in Marlborough, Mass. We're in the Apex Center complex. So if you're familiar with this area in the region, it's a 47-acre property. We've got two hotels, about a dozen restaurants and bars, bowling alley, go-karts, car wash, and 8 stories of workspace within. We take up Venture X, we take up 1.25 of the floors here
Mhm.
across the space, as you mentioned, about 16,600 square feet. We're about a mile off of 495 right in Marlborough. And so it's pretty convenient for people coming from the Pike or Route 9 or even just north of us from the Route 2 area as well. So.
Amazing. And I'd love to hear what led you down to this path of being able to own a workspace community. Like, what kind of made you realize that it was something that you wanted to pursue?
That's a great question. I had I like to term a come to Jesus moment in 2016. I had worked for a number of companies. My past career, I was in foreign currency trading and global banking. And from 1999 to 2016, so about 17 years or so, I maneuvered through a half dozen different companies. A
Mhm.
few of them were booms, and a few, unfortunately, considering the business, were busts.
Mm.
And I was at a turning point in life, and I said, I'm done with my life being decided upon and my fate being decided upon by actions of others at that time. And I said, I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to forge my path. And if I win, I win. And if I lose, I lose, but it's all on me.
Mhm.
Uh, and Kind of following in the footsteps of my dad, for 35 years, he had his own manufacturing business. And he prided himself being his own boss and having the discipline and the sheer staying power to do that. And I wanted to show him too that I could do it. I started the process then of trying to find a business. And then in 2017, I came across a similar business to Venture X.
Mhm.
It was a large-scale sublet building. There'd be therapists and accountants and lawyers in there and so on. And it's the traditional model that you'd see roadside anywhere here in Massachusetts or New England. Um, I liked the business, but it was an hour and a half from home. I had four
Mhm.
small kids. I coached some sports. I wanted to attend their other activities in the afternoons. Adding 3 hours of commuting onto a normal work day, it would be impossible. Being recently divorced at the time and having my kids half the week, my kids were number one priority for me.
Mhm.
So in the conversations with the business broker that was offering that, he said, well, why don't you just move the business? And I looked at him, I said, well, I'm pretty strong, but not that strong. I can pick up this 20,000 square foot building and move it closer to my house, right? Joking aside. And he said, no, Venture X. And I was like, okay, tell me more.
Mhm.
And Venture X being a new brand at the time, it had franchised in 2016. It only had a handful of locations in the US and a couple in Canada at the time. I was one of the first franchisees into the business.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was the only location north of Virginia until 2022. So it was a very interesting time for me. I was out here. I called it the Northern Outpost for them, and it was a lot of challenges. It was a lot
Mhm.
of challenges being a first time business owner on my own. A lot of challenges is getting things up and off the ground from that perspective. But that's how I kind of got into the business. I'm very much a do it myself. type guy. I come from a long list of doers.
Hmm.
My dad and my brother and other family members, and I really pride myself on that. Using good old Yankee engineering, right,
Yeah.
and everything done. And I was fortunate. I was fortunate. The timing was good for me. We had that pesky COVID bug there for a little bit that did disrupt some business, but all in all, I think it's actually turned out for the better for us.
Absolutely. And I love what you shared about, I think you said around that 2016 point when you realized that you didn't want to leave your fate in someone else's hands. And I think that is so true when it comes to corporate America or working for any other type of employer, is that compared to working for yourself, like you have full control over the business that you take in and what projects you are working on. And I feel like people who aren't in entrepreneurship don't always realize that. They think that there's more risk being in entrepreneurship. And of course there are, but I think that you have more control over what you can do and the success that you can reach, as you've seen since being able to start Venture X.
Yeah, no, to your point, I know I have a lot of friends still back in corporate world, and they're getting a little long in the tooth now, and it's starting to like, oh, they're reducing the workforce, and who are they going
Mm-hmm.
after? In some cases, it's some of the more seasoned people, that equates to higher paid people, and that's like you start to put a target on your back. In some cases, and there is no job security, when you're out on the corporate side. Owning your own business, there's a little bit more job security in some cases. If COVID prolonged to 2 or 3 years, I'd have been gone, more than likely.
Yeah,
Um, you know, but fortunately, it didn't persist like that. But that's like an extinguishing circumstance. That's really, pretty far out there on the tail if you're looking
mm-hmm.
at things that could happen and such. So, but for me, being an entrepreneur, I mean, it's been incredibly rewarding. I backstory. I went to school down the street from you at Bridgewater State. It was a college back then. Kind of dating myself, but so wasn't my gray hair. So, I got my degree in business management science and with a finance concentration at the time. And I only got to use a fraction of my education,
Mm-hmm.
in what I did. And people are like, yeah, but you were in finance for 2 decades. And I said, yeah, but I only used like that much of it. And what was really nice about opening my own business and running that show from day one is I actually had the opportunity to use more. Um, you know,
Totally.
Nowadays I'm all over marketing. I'm all over the financial side, of course, it fits in with me, but I also understand, the capital side of it. I understand the tax side of it. I understand the revenue and cash flow side of the financials. So it's really, I get to play that chief marketing officer and the chief financial officer, on top of the, chief operating officer on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
which has been really rewarding, when never really had to write a true business plan and go to a lender before and say, hey, can you give me $1 million? Until now. And I did that.
Yeah.
And I like to ask people, have you ever written a business plan and anyone handed you a check for $1 million afterwards to go try to run your own business? It's like I did. It was scary.
Yeah.
Scary. But at the same time, that scaredness it was just energy.
Yeah.
And coming into a business that's as beautiful as Venture X is in the workspace and how well laid out it is and everything. Even now, we're in our seventh year of operations, and somebody walked through the door this morning to meet with an attorney who has an office here, and the woman said, "Wow, this office is gorgeous." And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, "Thank you. It's 7 years old."
Yeah.
Um, it's we do a great job,
Mm-hmm.
and we deliver a fantastic product here. So it's fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can tell just from you talking about it, like how passionate you feel about it, especially as you said, wearing all these different hats, which I think is so impressive. How do you juggle all the different things that you need to focus on? I'm curious to hear if you have a team that supports you or how you kind of keep your head on straight with everything going on.
Some days it's hard. I could tell you there's a roll of duct tape right next to me here to keep my head from flying off. But I do have a team. It's not a massive team. It's two people here that help run the day-to-day operations and some of the sales,
Hmm.
and some of the marketing efforts. I quarterback a lot of it now, whereas a few years back, it was more of just me and others and who are assisting from that side. I do employ the aid of others, meaning I have a bookkeeper. It's a shared service. I don't have a full-time bookkeeper, but I don't need a full-time bookkeeper.
Hmm.
So I don't rely on myself to try to do that. And I have a tax accountant. I don't rely on that. I have an attorney that I go to. I don't rely on that. So there's pieces, but they're all either on retainer or they're on their service contracts. So I know I can go to them when I need to. I can get what I need done,
Hmm.
but it doesn't have to be all on me. I sure as heck am not going to draft a legal contract or pretend to try to do my taxes. I leave that to the professionals from there. So, one of your questions might be is as an entrepreneur, like, do you see yourself with limits? And it's just that it's you have to know your limits.
Yeah.
Uh, I employ a marketing company to manage the majority of our social media and other marketing efforts, whether it be through Google or social media aspects or advertising or coordinating something like a podcast like this. I
Hmm.
do that. Do we dabble in it as well? Yes, because we're here, we're live, we're fresh, so we can see aspects and angles that the marketing company they're not really delving into.
Right.
We've got front lines and they've got, secondary and tertiary lines from there. So it's good. And it's fun. That's the energizing part about this. Every day is a different day.
Hmm.
When you're running a business in certain cases, people will agree to that. Not too often does it just Monday to Friday and it's mundane the whole time and it's just business. And that part I like. I like the energy there. But to your point, or that you were saying is about my passion about this business in itself. For a large portion of those years that I was working in global banking, it wasn't behind a desk in a big office. From
Hmm.
sometimes it was. Sometimes it was at home. Sometimes it was at home in a private office. Right now, I live in an open concept house with a lot of kids. Um, they're all gone now. They're all grown up. But a half dozen years ago, there were five of them under our roof on a Monday, on most of the days of the week.
Hmm.
And that's taxing. It's taxing on being able to accomplish things. It's taxing on my poor Wi-Fi router. When kids are at home, because everybody seems to work off of two or three devices simultaneously today.
Yeah.
And it was pretty chaotic. And then other aspects where even before that, when I wasn't working from home, I was traveling the country and a few other locations and having to walk into a meeting room I've never been on. Back then, didn't even have Wi-Fi, but I still carried a projector because you didn't know if there was a monitor or if there wasn't even really monitors then you'd plug into.
Hmm.
But be able to project up onto the screen to demonstrate the product that we were using and selling and everything else as such. And it was it was full of anxiety. It's like, okay, am I in the
Yeah.
right place? Am I going to be able to get in? Can I get up onto the screen? Can I do this? Did the projector that we carried in break on the way, which I had happen one time? So when someone comes into our space and makes use of one of the meeting or training rooms that we have, like oh no, it's plug and play. Here you go. Here, jump on here, scan this QR code. You're on our Wi-Fi. Get up onto the screen. Oh, you need that, or conference phones right here. Here's the numbers, how to call out, so on and so forth. We take
Hmm.
care of that. People walk in, they're like, oh my God, this is so easy, and it's plug
Yeah.
and from that aspect, and then everything else that goes along with it. We try to take a lot of that um, outside that external issue that somebody has when they're coming in to make use of our facility. We try to remove all of that for them because they're
Hmm.
here to do one thing, and that's their job, right? Whether it be meet with somebody, sell them something, consult with them, learn something, whatever it is, their job is to do something. It's not to come in and play IT guy. Right. And it's not to come in to try to rearrange furniture for the room that they're in and the setting that they need it. or anything else like that, or stand there at the door waiting for their catering order to come in, so that they can serve their guests. We manage all of that out for them so they can go in and do that one thing that they're really there to do and be a success at that. So it would, if I walked in now to a facility and I didn't get the level of hospitality that I get from I give to a member here or even a guest here, I would be like that old curmudgeon, you know. And my wife even says it now. She's like, "Hold your tone." She's like, "They're doing their best." I go, "Yeah, but they could do so much better. Look at they could fix X, Y, and Z, and so on and so forth."
Mhm.
But that's just me. We've grown to this level of expectation on our performance that I expect it from everyone else as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I know you had mentioned that you were one of the first franchisees that had opened up, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on the benefits of opening a franchisee rather than I guess rather than not opening a franchisee, if that makes sense. Like curious to hear how it's worked well for you, rather than opening like I guess an independent co-working space would be the best way to put it.
Um, well, I mean, it goes both ways. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, it really comes down to the person.
Hmm.
And if you are already, already well experienced in operating a business, regardless of whatever flavor it is for that, and you're maybe just stepping out to do it on your own, you might have a lot of advantages and already some industry knowledge that you can lean on to really take that stair step growth moment.
Hmm.
Um, with somebody like myself that like, hey, look, I'm a savvy business person. I've done sales and I've done this and I've done that over the course of, you know, um, you know, 20 plus years of experience, but I go out on my own. I didn't know how to run a co-working business on day one, or
Hmm.
we like to term as a flexible workspace business. I wasn't familiar with the systems in the architecture of how the business actually operated on a daily basis. So I needed some assistance in that and some training and some guidance. Didn't need a ton of it. It's not like I went to like a 10-week course on how to run a co-working space. But it was meaningful and it was continued. So going into a franchise business like that, they're gonna teach you, they're gonna coach you, they're gonna show you the way in which they do it, and then why they're a success and we are a
Hmm.
success. From that, you also get the brand. You can see it. I wear it on my shirt today. You get that brand, and in a lot of cases, that brand recognition, and that from that brand is it's meaningful. As we're growing our brand. Across the country and actually around the world, it's starting to have more power, right? If I was to ask you, name me a co-working business right now, you'd say WeWork, right? Great. Well, we're owned by the vast co-working network, which is a host of three different franchise co-working businesses: Venture X, Office Evolution, and Intelligent Office.
Hmm.
And collectively, we have more locations and more square footage in the United States than WeWork does. We
Wow.
just didn't beat on our drum loud enough and maybe hit some news in good and bad ways for our name to get splashed out like it has for them.
Right.
But they're not even the biggest. They're a fraction of the size of the largest co-working and private office company that's out there.
Hmm.
And so, but back to the point is the brand does add value. So if you're running something, depending on where you are, getting that brand recognition, that product recognition, and all of that goes along with building a good business, it can be a little bit harder on your own. Not to say you can't be success. You can if you do it right. I could have been Venture Y, right?
Hmm.
And it wouldn't have mattered if I was out here on my own through the efforts that I made. Because most people that have walked through the door didn't say, oh, I was at Venture X in Denver or Dallas or Orlando or XYZ. I could name 75 other states
Hmm.
or cities here. They didn't say that. A few have come through and said, oh, yeah, I've been to this location. I've been to that location. And a few of my members have left and said, oh, I went to Chicago. I was down I went down to Charlotte and so on and so forth. So there is some land now,
Hmm.
but that was, like, that's 10 years of work, right? You
Right.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
So in 10 years, that's the next question. Okay, 20 years in, where's the brand?
Hmm.
And that's where it starts to make more sense. You could open a coffee shop, right? Ashley's Grinds or whatever you want to call it. And you'd have a great coffee shop. And if it's in a good location and you offer good coffee and good service and everything like that, and you'd be like, oh, that's great. You slap a D on the front of it, right? And people are like gonna take a hard left right into your shop because they know what they're gonna get. The brand's there, the product recognition is already known. Everybody knows what they're gonna go in, they're gonna get their medium regular with 2 extra sugars and so on and so forth, right? And they
Hmm.
know what they're gonna get. So, you know, it kind of goes both ways. You pay up for the brand, you pay up for that experience, that knowledge transfer that's coming down in the training that's given to you, you know. So with that, you expect your growth to move quicker as
Yep.
opposed to somebody that's going out and doing it on their own.
Hmm.
It's just what we've seen in Venture X is typically somewhere between 9 and 18 months you're moving into near full occupancy. Anything over 80% is near full. Um, Doing that in 9 months, 9 to 18 months is pretty good. Most of our tracks, we're seeing 9 to 15 months. If you're
Hmm.
doing that on your own, you're somewhere between 12 and 24 months, if not longer, on that same growth plan to get to that same level of occupancy. So you're like, oh, well, yeah, you're jumping 6 months of growth into it, at a minimum. And 6 months of growth is tens of thousands of dollars a month,
Yeah.
so you're like, okay, well, maybe it makes sense to go with a brand from that side. I mean,
Hmm.
you see it on the hotel side now as well, right? Marriott has 20 something different versions of Marriott under their Bonvoy program, and Hilton has the same, and IHG Holiday Inn has the same. They all have all these different brands and different sizes, and they don't own most of them. They're all franchised out.
Hmm.
Right. So you're like, well, why? It's like, well, because I buy through that brand. That's the brand I know. It's the brand I trust, so on and so forth. Same for workspaces now. Fast forward for when our kids are out in the workforce, 10, 20 years from now, and they're like, oh, yeah, where do you work? Oh, I work out of the Venture X over on XYZ. Like, oh, okay, cool. And they get it. They understand what it is. When they come in, it's not this foreign concept that, they just have this office and they have access to everything else around. And people think they walk in like, oh, this is your whole office. This is amazing. It's like, no,
Yeah.
that office is mine. That's Joe's and that's Sue's and all the way down the line. And they all work for different companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the topic of brand growth, I always like asking this question to anyone who has like a membership-based business. What has been your most successful way to get new members? Because of course that's great because you have that recurring revenue that's coming in. But what have you found works best with being able to attract those type of people who will just stay with you for the long run?
Well, attracting and retaining are two different things, right? So what's attracting people is the product in itself. I'd be honest with you, if most people walking through the door, if I said I'm brand X, not
Hmm.
Venture X, but brand X, they looked at it and they said, oh, wow, this place is gorgeous and I can get this and that's the price for it and I get all these extras with it. They're like, sign me up. It's not the brand that brings them in from that perspective, it's the product.
Hmm.
Um, and what keeps them here is just the same. Now, it's kind of contradictory to what I just said, whereas you're like building a brand, everything like that. Once people know the brand, and if you say you came to me and like, hey Ryan, I need a spot to work and this is my situation, so on, I'd be like, oh, hey, think of Venture X. Is there a Venture X around you? Because I know the product, I know what I'm going to get. And
Hmm.
it's just like if you were new to town, you're like, oh, hey, what's the name of that restaurant down the street? And I was like, oh, it's so and so, and this is the food that they serve, and you'd like it or you wouldn't like it, and it
Hmm.
would suit you. So what gets them in is they have a need, and on the cursory search we fit that need. They come in and they see the product and everything, and they see the value in that, what they're getting for that product at that price. And that's what really sells them. The space sells itself
Hmm.
realistically on a daily basis. I wouldn't mean to insult myself or my team who actually do the sale, but I've had people literally walk in and not even get past the front desk and they're like, sign me up. I want to work here. This place is gorgeous.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and from that side, I have members. I have members that have signed. I think my oldest member here signed. It's a fight between two or three people. I opened in April of 2019, and they were like May. I want to say first week or second week of May
Wow.
2019. And
Hmm.
they've never left. They've moved offices. They're like, oh, I want that office. Oh, I like that. I like that view better. They move it
Hmm.
around, change it up a little bit. One's grown and he needed a bigger office, and now his team has shrunk down and he's working remote. So he's moved over to a different, but they've never left.
Hmm.
And right behind that is, I've got a number of companies. June of 2019, another one I just mentioned. I wished them a happy birthday the other day because it was August of 2019. They moved in with us
Hmm.
here, and it's the same. It's like, do you want to move your office every 6, 12, 18 months? It's like, oh, you're
Right.
not I mean, if somebody's paying you to move your office, right, then that's your business. But if that's not, then that's the last thing you want to do, right?
Hmm.
Because it detracts from your overall goal.
Absolutely. And for anyone who's listening to this episode who is interested in starting a flexible workspace business, what advice would you have for them for getting started?
Talk talk with some of the owners.
Hmm.
And if somebody's interested in a Venture X, by all means, call me. I speak with, on average, 2 or 3 times a year. On behalf of the franchise, I go in to communal settings like this, not necessarily a podcast, but on an online communal setting, and meet with prospective buyers,
Hmm.
prospective owners, and help answer questions from them. And then probably I have to say once a month, I get a call or an email from somebody who's like, hey, I'm interested in the business. Can you tell me more about it? Um, I did not have that luxury back in 2017 and 2018 when I was doing my due diligence on, hey, is this a good idea?
Hmm.
There were only a couple locations that were open. I got to see, an operating facility, a facility that was operating, and I met with the franchise team, but I didn't have 50 plus owners and 70 plus locations for Venture X that I could walk in and try out. And I've had it. I've had prospective owners. I was like, grab your laptop and power cord, come on in and sit down and work.
Yeah, test it
You know,
out.
I mean, if you don't eat the food at the restaurant you're gonna buy, really, then what are you doing, right?
Right.
So, so I welcome. I said, talk with the owners. Doesn't matter what it is. Try the product.
Hmm.
Um, and just do your due diligence. I mean, do it from every angle. Bring some friends in, go somewhere, get your family member, try it.
Hmm.
Uh, because if you don't, and you're just buying it on face value, what you're reading on paper, that might not be a necessarily smart investment decision,
Hmm.
because these are not, fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know. These aren't cheap endeavors, and it's not just a Venture X, but I mean, look at a Dunkin' Donuts franchise or any other franchise. I mean, Chick-fil-A is a beautiful franchise to get into. It's only 10 grand to get in, if you can get in.
Hmm.
Very hard vetting process there. But others, you've got, 5, 6, 7 figure franchise license purchases, I
Hmm.
mean, $1 million for a license for a coffee shop, it tells you how much money they're going to make, as well. But it's this real dollars. This isn't just some pop-up, hot dog stand that you're going to put on the corner,
Hmm.
in for 5 grand.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great piece of advice to just speak with the people who are in it right now and be able to see what they would recommend and be able to use their perspective to guide you moving forward.
Mhm. It also
Hmm.
helps align expectations.
Hmm.
I've had some people coming in and like, oh, you must be making millions of dollars. Like, well, no, not quite. It's they're like, yeah, but look at all the it's like, yeah, but here's the metrics. This is how it works. The kind of here's some of the financials. You do your own math on that, and you've got to kind of um, you know, um, knock a little bit of the cover off of it so people can actually see what it takes to operate and what it makes, because again,
Hmm.
no one goes into business to lose money, right? So you have to align that. And then as they do their due diligence and they look at it and then they start to actually forecast out, what it would look like if they did do it, then they have a better idea.
Yeah.
The last thing I would want to do is have somebody come in with a blindfold on, get into a franchise location, especially mine, my brand, and then fail. That doesn't really look good on me. And then people are like, well, why did that one go out? And it's like, well, he didn't really do his homework. He
Hmm.
didn't realize that he needed this much working capital and that it was going to cost this much money to rent the building and this much money to fill it, and it'd take this long for it to actually start making money.
Right.
Some people
Yeah.
think walk in and flick on the lights and money starts pouring down from the ceiling.
Yeah, definitely not that case. But
I want
having,
that business. If I
yeah,
find it,
exactly.
I'll call you.
But having started Venture X, I think you said April 2019, so 6 years ago, where do you see yourself going in the next 5 to 6 years? Like, what's coming ahead for you that you're excited about?
Um, Well, my biggest excitement is last Friday, last Thursday and Friday, I sent my last two. I have twins, twin girls. I sent them off to college. So between my wife and I and our seven kids, four are done. One's a junior, and I've got the two freshmen. So we are like officially empty nesters, although the older ones seem to be coming back now. Um, and we are changing the locks on the doors to stop that. But all joking aside, the next 4 years are going to be, transitional for me,
Hmm.
with a lot of different things going on. We've already got a granddaughter. Probably going to see some more in a few years, and I got a bunch of weddings to go to in between that, and a lot of other incredible things for the three that are still in school and everything. So for me in this business now, what I'm really looking to do is to kind of take a little bit more of a backseat to it and let the
Hmm.
business run itself. I went a bunch of years without really much on that vacation fun stuff over the course of the last decade or so with everything that I was doing in work. So my wife and I, and we're still kind of newlyweds, been married almost 2 years now. We're taking some time to ourselves because we've been raising kids for nearly 30 years and doing everything else for everybody else. So,
Hmm.
you know, that's kind of the game plan for right now. I was forging down the path of adding more locations because I have a couple like ideas on where I'd like to put them and everything. But I think I'm just gonna take it easy for a minute. I've been pushing hard for a long time.
Yeah, that is a great reminder. I reminds me of something I once heard, which is the idea of work will always be there, but life won't. And so what you've shared is to just take that time to take a step back, pause, and be able to focus on those fun moments because you can always pick back up with growing and being able to pick up your next venture after that.
Exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
And the business here for right now, there isn't any growth opportunities within the building.
Hmm.
So if I was to say, okay, let's do more, the more would be another location elsewhere. And I
Hmm.
don't know if that's a lift I really want to go try to pick up right now.
Yeah.
Couple years from now, I know the building's probably going to turn over a little bit for some of the other tenants within the space just because of timing and where things are. So they might present some opportunity for us to do something here. Growth wise, though, right now we're at 96.5% occupancy. You know, I I'm more than happy to running the business and keeping it right here where it is, and
Hmm.
just maintain this great occupancy level. People are like, well, how well have you done in the past? Is this the first time? We averaged in 2023 and 2024 over 95%. In 2022, we averaged over 90% occupancy.
Hmm.
2020 and 2021, well, we kind of know what happened there.
Yeah.
Um, we did hit a little bit of a flat spot there, but the business as a whole does amazingly well. So, as long as my team can manage and maintain this, it's like, okay, well, you know, can't complain.
Yeah, absolutely. And now a fun question I love to ask our guests is what are your favorite local businesses to support?
Well, one of the fun things that we actually get to do here at Venture X is we get to feed our members. So just as an example today, we had breakfast here and it was brought in from Chick-fil-A, who happens to be right next door. So if you haven't, not to promote them, but I will shamelessly promote Chick-fil-A, not that they need help. Their chicken biscuit and their bacon, egg, and cheese on a biscuit. They had a chicken burrito and they had hash browns and this and that. The food was amazing. But the businesses that I like to support locally, for the most part, are the local eateries here in and around Marlborough. Just last Thursday, we had Purple Pig Barbecue from down the street, cater lunch. And like I said, like 4 to 6 times a month, we've got a local business that we're having in to cater. And we do it for two reasons. One is we like to feed our members. We know the food brings everybody together, it helps create a sense of community.
Mhm.
We've got 30, 40, 50 people in here at any given time, and they walk in, they're like, oh, what smells so good? It's like, oh, we're actually making waffles today. We have a waffle day with a full waffle bar, fresh waffles being made literally on site. So the whole place smells amazing, right? Waffles are
Mhm.
the best smelling breakfast. Or it's barbecue, or it's some gourmet pizza from a local pizza truck, or I could ramble on for a while here. We had an ice cream truck here like two weeks ago. Everyone went down and picked out their favorite ice cream off the truck, and it was pretty funny because it was amazing to see what people were coming back. The push pop, the rocket pop, the screwballs, and everything else. I mean, it's kind of nostalgic for people like, oh, I haven't had anything off an ice cream truck in 20 years. I haven't been a kid, and we do a lot. So the local businesses and the local eateries, we love to support
Mhm.
because we know that not only are we helping another local business, in their ownership and their employ of their people, we're feeding our members, and we're giving our members an opportunity to try a place that they might not even know about. So it's kind of like this
Totally.
triple win for us, and our members love it. Like
Oh.
we put a calendar together and we post it everywhere, and we tell people, hey, reminders, this is happening on this day. And some members will actually circle the dates and make sure they're like, oh, I know we've got lunch coming in from wherever today. We're like, yeah, we know we were going to see you. It's Burger Bar from the Fix, or it's
Mhm.
this from here. And it's like, okay. And we can kind of measure, by the parking lot in some cases, like, oh, parking lot's full today. It's like, yeah, we're feeding people, you
Mhm.
know. And that's the fun part. I mean, that's really fun.
Totally. I love that. Ryan, this has been such a fun episode, and I've so enjoyed having you come on the show to share everything you're doing at Venture X. And now I'd like to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online if they'd like to connect.
Yeah, I'd love to have them connect. We're at, of course, venturex.com. You can see all the locations there. We're in Marlborough, Massachusetts. We have an open door policy, 8:30 to 5, Monday to Friday. So if you have your laptop and you want to come in and try the space out for free for the first time, it's on us. We're more than happy to let you in and do that. Or if you just want to take a walk around the space, more than welcome to do so as well.
Amazing. And I will include all of your links in the show notes so our listeners can easily connect with you from there. But thank you so much again for coming on this week's show.
It's been my pleasure. You have a great day.